Presidential candidate Jang Jun-hee was suddenly shot down at the scene. In the midst of the chaos, his wife, former UN Ambassador Munju, rushed to his side, but he was losing a lot of blood. At this time, the assassin continued to raise the gun and aim it straight at them. Munju used her whole body to block the bullet for Jun-hee. Suddenly, a flash went off. The assassin continued to shoot randomly. Jun-hee tore off Munju's pendant before he passed out. Not long after, the gun was pointed at them again. In the moment of death, a mercenary named Sanho appeared in time to take down the assassin in a flash, but Jun-hee was in critical condition. Immediately after, the assassin also committed suicide by drinking poison. Although Jun-hee was taken to the emergency room, he still died from excessive blood loss. The whole country was shocked. Munju was devastated, but very quickly, the powerful political family fell into a new spiral. Jun-hee's younger brother, Jun-song, announced that he would run for office in his brother's place because after the shooting, the party's support rate would be at its highest. But Jun-hee's mother suddenly suggested that Munju run for office because the public sympathy for a wife who lost her husband would bring an unparalleled advantage. At that moment, the lawyer appeared with a shocking will. Jun-hee left all his assets to his wife, including 44 billion in cash, 5 real estates worth 280 billion, and 55 billion in tangible assets. The whole family was stunned when they heard this. The assets that their family had worked hard to accumulate for 3 generations now fell into the hands of a woman outside the family. A person with no family background suddenly entered this house and now became the sole heir. In a fit of anger, everyone directed all their anger at Munju. Tensions escalated when Jun-hee's grandmother spoke harshly. She blamed Munju for not having any children, leaving Jun-hee alone for so many years. Jun-hee's mother even declared that she would sue to the end. Munju choked up when she had to face the harsh criticism. Munju only wanted a peaceful life. Munju even gave up her career at a peak. She resigned as a UN ambassador to quietly take care of her family. However, her husband suddenly passed away. She became a widow. Now, because of that will, she became a sinner in the eyes of everyone. Finally, Munju could not bear it any longer. Munju coldly declared that she did not need the property that her family had built up for 3 generations. She would donate it all and leave Korea. At the same time, Sanho received an international call. On the other end of the line was Agent Ethan. Ethan informed that a Korean client wanted to invite Sanho to take on a special mission, which was to become Munju's personal bodyguard. The client wanted Sanho to protect Munju, but he absolutely had to keep it a secret. He had to believe that her hiring him was her own decision. He was not allowed to reveal anything about the client's identity. In addition, the client also wanted all relevant information, who she met and what she talked about. Being a cautious person, Sanho always investigated before accepting a job. Sanho began to secretly follow Munju. She did not collapse, but still tried to maintain her daily jogging habit and continued to work as usual. But it seemed that she did not know that she was in danger. She also did not know that there was a shadow silently following her every step. The police informed her that the assassin was a soldier in a special forces unit of South Korea. In his house, there were many pictures and documents about her husband, perhaps because her husband intended to unify the 2 regions. But he opposed that, so he assassinated Jun-hee. The person who took him down was Sanho. No one knew where Sanho came from, but according to the investigation, he was an American citizen. Since then, Sanho disappeared without a trace. A few days later, Ethan called back to ask if Sanho accepted the job. Sanho said he did not intend to get involved in this matter. Sanho said she looked much stronger than he thought. Unexpectedly, Sanho refused such a lucrative assignment. But then, for some incomprehensible reason, Sanho still decided to meet Munju once. What surprised Munju was that Sanho showed her necklace. It was a keepsake her husband held before he died. But at that moment, their meeting was captured by Munju's stalker and reported to his boss. Sanho asked Munju if she knew she was being followed. Sanho immediately took Munju to a deserted tunnel, but before they could run away, the crowd arrived. Sanho told Munju to continue while he turned back to fight the others. When Sanho finished off the others, he grabbed Munju's hand and pulled her into the dark night. He told her to close her eyes. Wait a moment before opening them. Munju did as she was told, and when she opened her eyes, the whole night sky lit up before her. Sanho said they couldn't catch us. In the dark, they couldn't act. At that moment, Munju suddenly understood that the only person she could trust now was Sanho. She told him about the important clue on the day of the assassination. Many people said the assassin was just crazy, but Munju clearly remembered his eyes and tone. It was clear that he was not crazy and not lying. Sanho was sure that there was a mastermind behind him. Sanho said that before the assassination, he saw a very strange detail. The assassin seemed to have secretly put something in a drawer. Later, when Sanho checked again, he found a notebook. In it was written a phone number, but when he tried tried to call. It was a non-existent number. How powerful a person could make a phone number disappear, or that person could use any number he wanted. Immediately after, the president received a report from her subordinate telling her to keep an eye on Munju. Things got even more complicated when the person who had contact with the assassin before the shooting happened was Junek's younger brother. Meanwhile, Munju was shocked to discover that her husband had drawn a picture of a squirrel 2 months ago. He often called the person following him a squirrel. This meant that her husband had realized the danger 2 months ago. There was a squirrel following them. Coincidentally, her husband also often called his younger brother a squirrel. At that moment, Munju received a report from his assistant, Miji. Kim Jong-chun's assassin family was leaving the house in a hurry. Their faces were extremely tense. There were many people following them to help them, but it was clear that they were not family members. Munju immediately concluded that someone must have wanted to take them away because they had something to hide. Miji was soon discovered by those people. When Munju arrived at the airport, Miji had disappeared without a trace. Just then, the phone rang. As expected, everything was manipulated by Junsang. Munju asked why Junsang wanted to kill Junek, but Junsang firmly denied it. Junsang was a prosecutor in the Korean Special Investigation Team, and the reason Junsang followed Junek was because the investigation showed that Junek was a spy. Junsang had previously set up a special task force to cover up this case. If the people knew the presidential candidate was a spy, the consequences would be unimaginable. In a tense election period like this, just a rumor was enough to cause chaos in Korea. If North Korea was involved in Junek's assassination, there would even be a risk of war. And if the US was also involved, the Korea-US alliance would certainly collapse. For the sake of family, country, and world peace, Junsang had to hide this whole thing. But for Munju, her husband absolutely could not be a spy. Munju believed even more that Junsang was the one who was good at creating evidence. Before Junsang left, he threatened Munju that she had 24 hours to leave Korea. Otherwise, Miji would die. With no other choice, Munju had to temporarily accept. Munju went to a priest for guidance, but she discovered that he had been murdered. Sanho suddenly appeared behind Munju. Suddenly, the priest's killer rushed forward. A fierce battle broke out. The two sides fought fiercely, with no clear winner. Finally, Sanho was able to subdue the killer. At that moment, a loud knocking sound rang out on the door. The killer took the opportunity to jump out the window and escape. Sanho quickly took Munju out through an underground tunnel built in ancient times. Only a few people knew about the existence of this place, including the priest and Sanho. Munju asked Sanho frankly if it was a coincidence or if there was a secret behind her husband and the priest's death. But Sanho did not answer directly. He said that if he was dangerous, she should not have followed him in the first place. He said that the priest's Bible also had the same strange card. When Sanho checked the back of the priest's hand, the signs showed that he must have died from a poisoned pen, a sophisticated way of killing that only professionals would use. The priest was to celebrate Mass tomorrow and deliver Congressman Jang's message. Perhaps that was why he was killed. In the wine cellar, Sanho found another bottle of wine with his name on it. Hidden inside was a photo that looked exactly like a nuclear submarine. Perhaps that was what the killer had just said. Whales at the bottom of the sea. This photo was exactly what the killer was looking for. When Sanho analyzed the coordinates, he discovered that the photo was taken in the sea around Mahjong Island. Along with it was a letter addressed to Jang Jun-e. It turned out that the photo was taken by the South Korean Defense Intelligence Agency's own intelligence satellite 2 weeks ago. A 10-ton North Korean nuclear super submarine that could carry 128 nuclear warheads. This news shocked the United States. The U.S. Secretary of State immediately called Assistant Anderson to ask, but Anderson was also shocked when he heard the news. They immediately discussed a plan to use tactical nuclear weapons to precisely attack 40 North Korean military targets. Anderson asked at the meeting what the probability of the current situation completely escalating was. The report showed that there was a 32% chance of a full-scale war breaking out. The 41 possibilities of conflict were limited to the region. If the conflict escalated, the entire East Asia region would become a battlefield. After the meeting, Anderson questioned whether North Korea had enough money and technology to build this monster, or was it just fake news? But the minister did not change his decision to attack North Korea. He even excluded Anderson from the meeting. Anderson secretly sent a secret letter to Junek asking him to announce the truth. The letter was encrypted and required him to destroy it after reading it. Only then did Munju realize that what her husband wanted to announce on the day of his assassination was this shocking truth. In order to prevent a nuclear war, he had to pay with his life. The priest also reminded Sanho to return to North Korea as soon as possible because his family was there. Then the two left through the tunnel. Munju intended to use her personal connections to convey this important situation to the current South Korean president. Sanho gave Munju his ammunition amulet, and they each went their separate ways. Munju ran straight to the presidential palace. Coincidentally, President Che was coming out by car, but her reaction was extremely cold. She quietly smoked a cigarette in the car, and then suddenly lit a fire to destroy the top-secret documents right in front of Munju. She explained that she started investigating after Junik's death. Junik's death had to be handled politically and diplomatically. She would take this opportunity to join the American boat. It was her responsibility to prevent war from happening, but this chessboard was more complicated than Munju thought. She advised Munju to go abroad as soon as possible. If Munju stayed, there would be only death. This conversation left Munju extremely stunned. Meanwhile, Sanho had already arrived in Dalian, China. He planned to sneak into North Korea through a smuggler, but when they reached the river, he suddenly found that the ferry had been blocked. There were shouts, gunshots, and people jumping into the water. At that moment, Sanho made the most important decision of his life. He told his client that he would take the case. A few days ago, Munju suddenly discovered that her husband, before being assassinated, had kept in close contact with Professor Im. He recounted that exactly a month ago, Junik came to him and showed him a letter from an American friend. At the same time, Nanek invited him to join the presidential campaign team and serve as a strategic advisor, but Professor Im refused. In this rotten environment, he no longer had any faith to contribute. Unexpectedly, Munju immediately said that she wanted to run for president herself. She asked him for support. She promised that if she succeeded, she would put all her efforts into turning the wheel of history. At that moment, a photo of Munju bravely blocking the gun barrel on the day her husband was assassinated was suddenly released to the international media by an American journalist. In just a split second, Munju's image spread all over the world. It pushed her reputation sky high. Meanwhile, in order to confront Junsan, Munju rediscovered his scandal from 10 years ago. While Junsang was still debating, Munju released new evidence. It showed that the drunk driver who caused the accident and injured 2 people and 3 others that year was Junsang. The blow was so vicious that Junsang could not refute. In the end, Junsang was forced to accept leaving Korea at Munju's request. Not long after, Munju's approval ratings skyrocketed, far surpassing the other candidates. Even more surprising than Junik's parents, who had once fiercely opposed Munju over the inheritance, they now turned to support her wholeheartedly. Because Junik's mother understood that in this game of interests, standing with Munju was the wise choice. She even advised Munju to make a grand announcement of her candidacy right at Wangwamun Square. The campaign team must exploit and protect that image at all costs. Meanwhile, Bank Sanho quietly returned to Korea and signed a contract with the Valkyrie mercenary organization and received an important mission. Watching Munju on TV transform from a sorrowful widow into a strong, cold politician, Sanho's heart was filled with mixed emotions. The next morning, Munju's phone rang. On the other end of the line was President Che. She knew that Munju would run against her, so she called to warn Munju. But Munju bluntly replied, "I'm not against you, but I think she can't stop the war." She said Junik's death must be handled politically and diplomatically, and saw it as an opportunity to cling to America. But she was wrong. This is an opportunity to get closer to the truth. Any policy that is not based on the truth will collapse sooner or later. President Che laughed sarcastically, and without America, Munju can't dream of becoming president. They never want Munju to be elected, so she'd better be careful. The next day, Munju put on a strong black suit. Today would be the most difficult day. She would officially announce her candidacy. Wangwamun Square was crowded. Waves of people chanted her name. TV cameras, social media live streams, all focused on one name as the number 2 candidate compared to Munju. Munju walked out with a confident demeanor and a proud smile. At that moment, in a hidden corner of the opposite high-rise building, Sanho quietly set up a sniper rifle. He was not aiming at Munju, but to protect her. At that moment, he received a secret order from the organization. Many assassins were hiding along the road, targeting Munju. Sanho immediately left his position and rushed straight to the campaign team. He said he needed to see her immediately. This was an emergency, but it was too late. Munju had already boarded the high-speed train heading to the next stop. Sanho was crazy. He told her to sit still and not move. Her seat might have a pressure bomb. If she stood up, it would explode. The air in the train car immediately froze. Munju took a deep breath and calmly replied that she understood. While Sanho drove like crazy towards the station, Munju ordered his assistant Miji to evacuate passengers in this train car and not let them panic. The tense moment dragged on with each tick of the clock. Sanho finally arrived at Munju's car. They greeted each other briefly. Sanho immediately started searching for the bomb. Sure enough, he found a pressure-time bomb under Munju's seat. The cold red numbers jumped every second. There were only 6 minutes left, and the bomb disposal team could only arrive in more than 10 minutes. Munju was originally a very calm person, but at this moment, he could not help but tremble. Sanho reached in to cut the control wire, but the clock continued to count down. He spoke softly softly as if to command and also to comfort her, to breathe evenly and look into his eyes. The more urgent the job, the slower he did it. Then he told her to change seats with him and leave this train. Everyone was waiting for her, but Munju wanted to stay with him. She had lost her husband, her child, and no one else. So even if she had to die, she was not afraid. Sanho finally convinced Munju. He approached, gently lifted her over him, and slowly sat in her place. The life and death moment stretched like thin silk. Just a small mistake could cost them both their lives. But in the end, they successfully switched places. Sanho promised to go out soon so that Munju could get off the train with peace of mind. She could only hold her breath and pray for him, a moment as long as a lifetime. When there were only a few seconds left, Sanho jumped up and swung herself up, and the bomb exploded violently. Munju waited anxiously. Then Munju breathed in when she saw that Sanho was still alive. At that moment, she realized that she would never forget this man. While Munju anxiously watched Sanho being treated for his wound, Miji advised her to postpone today's campaign to rest. But Munju still decided to go to the square as planned. In the cold wind of Wanghwa Square, thousands of people had been waiting for a long time. And then there was a loud shout. Candidate after Munju had arrived. Munju took a deep breath and confidently stepped up to the podium. No empty script, no looking at the board, just a genuine Munju with shining eyes. After Munju's speech, the applause was thunderous. The whole square exploded. A political star was born that night. And on the high floor of the building opposite, Sanho quietly looked down. The proud eyes of the most silent die-hard fan were also the ones who risked their lives to keep her in this world. Below, Munju looked up and smiled as if silently thanking the silent hero. After the event, Munju personally went to meet Sanho to thank him. He was afraid that she would be in danger again, so he suggested that she hire him as her personal bodyguard. Munju was still a bit skeptical because she did not know Sanho's background, but in the face of his sincerity, she finally agreed. She hoped for his help. Meanwhile, in the middle of the ocean, a supernuclear submarine emerged from the waves. A ballistic missile was silently launched, soaring into the sky. Actually, Munju was still not completely reassured, so she asked two assistants to investigate Sanho. The results showed that no one had ever lost their lives when they hired him as a bodyguard. Therefore, Miji strongly supported Munju's hiring of Sanho. Meanwhile, Chan-hee was worried that Sanho was nothing more than a contract killer. Sanho became a U.S. citizen in 2006 and was sent to visit the war in Iraq in 2007. Before that, Sanho registered as a Mongolian. Sanho's background was really too mysterious. He used to volunteer at a church where North Korean defectors gathered. If Sanho was a spy from North Korea, it would be very dangerous. Moreover, what was his motive for approaching her in the first place? Munju emailed an old friend of hers to ask about Sanho. He praised Sanho as the best agent of the Valkyrie mercenary organization. Among Sanho's illustrious achievements, the most notable was the time he saved his client, the daughter of an Arab billionaire, from the horrific terrorist attack in Paris. That year, terrorists went on a rampage in a luxury nightclub in Paris. To protect his client, Sanho did not hesitate to shoot and scare the people fighting to run away. Taking advantage of that opportunity, Sanho shot down a terrorist and then pulled his client to escape. Immediately after, Sanho shot down the female terrorist and used his body to shield her from a terrible explosion. In the end, his client not only survived, but also did not have a single wound. So Munju's old friend advised her to hire Sanho as a bodyguard if he accepted. Meanwhile, President Chai went to Beijing to attend the climate conference. Professor Im believes that her real purpose is to ask China to mediate. The U.S. Vice President also made a surprise visit to Beijing this morning, and he is staying at the state guest house. Munju also discovered two other people there, Madame Zhou and Jin Soo-joon, two interpreters of Kim Han-sang. Kim Han-sang was talking with the U.S. Vice President while President Chai was ignored. But why does China like war? Professor Im believes that they want to take advantage of this time to drag North Korea into the Russia-China alliance. From there, change the international order established after World War II, overthrowing the U.S. and its allies. The two sides may have a big fight on the Korean peninsula. The CIA director was said to have arrived in Seoul this afternoon, while President Chai was in China. So he was most likely here because of Munju. If Junique's death was caused by the Americans, they would see her as a very serious threat. They would wonder what Munju knew and what would happen to the peninsula. If Munju became president of South Korea, he would advise her to rally the people's support and make them want peaceful unification. That would be her strongest card. Junique's mother seemed unhappy when she learned that Munju was moving out tomorrow for safety reasons. She warned Munju about the gossip when Munju hired Sanho Sanho as a bodyguard. But Munju never cared about what other people thought. Jun's ex-mother warned Munju that Sanho was clearly the type of man who could move a woman's heart. Moreover, he had even risked his life to save her twice. But she shouldn't let her emotions get the better of her. Munju said she hired Sanho because she wanted to know why he saved her. It might lead her to the reason why her husband was killed. Sanho was the only clue Munju had. The next day, Munju moved to a new place. It was a villa on a high hill that was easy to defend. Sanho went into the room himself first and checked every corner to ensure safety. He also advised her not to leave a photo of her and her husband next to the bed because it was an ideal place to hide a tracking device. Then, he stopped her from opening the window because snipers often aimed in that direction. He had already covered the window with bulletproof film. Sanho's excessive caution made Munju feel suffocated. Gun ownership is banned in Korea, but he said he was carrying one himself. Assassins don't follow any rules. He even insisted on sleeping in the defense room right next to hers. He couldn't stay in the room across the hall because that would put another door in the way, and those 2 seconds were enough time to fire 6 bullets. Munju's assistant couldn't stop Sanho, so he let Munju negotiate with Sanho. She told him straight up that he was being too much of a perfectionist and asked him to be more flexible. But Sanho said that was the minimum. If he wanted to be perfect, he would have to lock her in a room with no windows or 2 doors, and that wasn't enough because they could blow it up. At this point, Munju could only sigh. Jun's mother came to see Munju's new place. Chan-hee took her inside for a tour. At this time, Sanho was cooking while eavesdropping on her and Chan-hee talking about him. It turned out that Sanho asked to cook for Munju personally to ensure safety. Sanho also got the ingredients from a familiar monastery. Jun's mother told Chan-hee to keep an eye on the two because she was afraid they would have feelings for each other. In addition, she also asked him for a secret job. Because her house was bugged by the Korean intelligence agency, she asked him to search tracking devices, then find out who was involved in this and how it was related to Jun's assassination. This matter had to be kept secret even from Munju because she did not completely trust her. She only trusted Chan-hee because he was Jun's trusted assistant. Munju only ate a few spoonfuls of soup and left it, making Sanho confused and doubting his cooking skills. At this time, Sanho received a text message from Ethan warning that Munju might be in danger tomorrow. Sanho asked Miji, and he found out that Munju didn't eat much, especially time-consuming dishes like the whole stewed chicken he made. For someone born into poverty like Sanho, Munju was really wasting food. The next day, Munju had an election campaign. She declared that she would do everything to unite the people and solve this crisis. As president, she would bring peace to the country. She would not back down no matter what danger awaited her. Below, voters chanted Munju's name. Meanwhile, Sanho kept observing his surroundings. He discovered a suspicious long-haired man in the stands. He immediately contacted Chang-hee to check, but Chang-hee did not cooperate. Chang-hee told Sanho to focus on his work. At this time, the suspicious long-haired guy had started moving and blended into the crowd. Sanho changed the frequency to contact Ethan, but he could not provide any more information. After the speech ended, Sanho took Munju to the car. Then he drove away himself. But halfway there was a traffic jam because a tanker truck broke down in front. Munju happily tried to open the window to interact with a young fan, but Sanho stopped her. Although she was not happy, she had to follow. At this time, Sanho discovered that the long-haired guy from earlier was standing on the side of the road, his hand still lightly holding the other. Suddenly, a truck rushed from behind. He panicked and urged the driver to turn around, but before they could do anything, the truck flew straight into the back, pushing their car through. Continuous strong collisions. Just as their car was about to crash into the tanker, Sanho grabbed the steering wheel and turned. At that moment, the long-haired man pressed the button to explode the tanker. While Munju was still stunned, Sanho opened the door and pulled her away. The street was in chaos, smoke and fire everywhere. Sanho took Munju to the subway station. He gave her a towel to cover her nose. Then he went into the control room and opened the door to the tunnel where the train was running. He told her to turn off her phone, and the two of them went into the tunnel. At this time, the TV was reporting the explosion at the subway station. Chan-hee saw the car carrying Munju was crushed on the side of the road. Chan-hee became more worried when she called Sanho and Munju, but couldn't get through. Just then, Miji returned to report that Sanho had taken Munju to safety. Chan-hee immediately mobilized the search force, and he even allowed them to shoot Sanho if Sanho endangered Munju. At this time, Sanho was leading Munju along the wire. Every time the train passed, he used his body to protect her. At that moment, they did not say a word, but Munju still clearly felt the sincere warmth radiating from Sanho. When Munju asked why he knew there would be danger, Sanho said that he had noticed the long-haired long-haired man since the campaign, until Sanho saw the kukri knife tattoo on this man's neck. He was sure of his guess, because it was the sign of the Nepalese GK soldiers, the most notorious and ruthless warriors in the world. Munju seemed guilty about the explosion, so Sanho immediately encouraged Munju to be strong and move on. Everything had just begun. He intended to raise his hand to wipe the blood from her forehead, but he hesitated. Finally, the two of them exited the tunnel when they arrived at another train station. When they got home, Chang-hee immediately asked Sanho why he didn't contact him. Sanho immediately replied that Chang-hee didn't trust him, and he didn't trust anyone. Chang-hee refused to check on the suspicious person at the campaign site. Miji also testified that Sanho had discovered the danger that was about to happen. Sanho declared that he would drive for Munju from now on. After Sanho returned to his room, he immediately called Ethan to ask who the client was, and what was he facing. Why were they eavesdropping and following him? But Ethan said that they were only following orders, not allowed to ask questions. And when Sanho signed the contract, he agreed to provide information about Munju. Sanho suspects Ethan because the only people who know their planned route are him and the mysterious client. Sanho says he will return the money and terminate contract. Meanwhile, Chang-hee warns Munju that Sanho is very suspicious. The intelligence agency believes that the subway bombing was done by an American defense contractor named Coltrane. It is where the Secretary of Defense Eagle used to be an advisor, and the director of this company is a cousin of the director of Valkyrie. So it is very possible that Sanho is involved in the bombing. He does not help her avoid danger. On the contrary, he always drags her into trouble. The villa they are renting also has problems. The owner suddenly sold it right when they needed it. It is really suspicious, but Munju reassures Chang-hee that she has always been wary of Sanho. That same night, Chang-hee goes to the Chang family's villa to check for tracking devices. Sure enough, Chang-hee found a hidden wiretap in Junik and Munju's bedroom socket, and Junsang's spreadsheet contained those recordings. Munju was still haunted by her husband's personality. Even in her dreams, she couldn't forget him. When she woke up, she opened the window to get some fresh air. Munju was about to knock on Sanho's door when he knocked first. She froze for a few seconds before he remembered he didn't let her open the window. Seeing that Munju was too tired from the pressure, Sanho invited her to go jogging to relieve stress. It really worked. While jogging, Munju seemed to temporarily forget all her worries. Her mood seemed much better. She asked him if it was related to the house they were living in. He confesses that he found the perfect place and arranged with the owner so she could buy it right away. Munju warns her that she knows Sanho still has a lot to say, and no matter how many times he continues to save her life, she will never fully trust him. But Sanho doesn't care. He will continue to do his job. Munju asks Sanho if someone shoots her, will he take the bullet for her? He says that's the job of a bodyguard. Hearing this, Munju takes off the amulet from her neck and puts it on Sanho. He is now her guardian angel. Chang-hee reports to Ok-san about the listening devices he found. Jun-san was the one listening. Fortunately, there is no evidence that Junik is a North Korean spy. However, Ok-san still suspects that Munju killed Junik because he suddenly made a will, leaving all his assets to her. Ok-san asks Chang-hee to follow Munju. In return, she gives him a luxury watch and promises more opportunities. Meanwhile, Sanho is praying for the deceased priest's soul and for Munju. What Sanho doesn't expect is that Munju has heard all his prayers. It turns out that the necklace she gave him has a bug. Just then, Chang-hee calls to inform him that he has found Junik's secret phone. It turns out that Junik used Chang-hee's name to register another phone. Chang-hee remembers that Junik used a strange phone. When Chang-hee searches Junik's car, he finds it hidden next to the seat. But first, he has to find a way to unlock it. Chang-hee knows some of the combinations Junik used, so he can use software to crack it. As soon as Chang-hee opened his phone, he read Junik's message to someone. Chang-hee sighed and quickly took the phone and left. Miji called Chang-hee to ask about the phone, but he didn't answer. Just then, she saw him driving somewhere. She immediately followed. When Munju arrived at the office, she couldn't see Chang-hee. Sanho discovered that Chang-hee had destroyed the computer's hard drive before he left. At this time, Chang-hee was driving and calling someone, but the other person didn't answer. Suddenly, the truck in front crossed into Chang-hee's lane, causing his iron bars to fall. Chang-hee panicked and turned the wheel and crashed straight into the side of the road. Miji was right behind. She panicked and got out of the car and ran back to check the situation. Chang-hee was immediately taken to the hospital. In the last moment before Chang-hee went to the emergency room, he tried to tell Munju that Congressman Jang might actually be a spy. Miji picked up the phone near the accident site, but it seemed like Chang-hee had already reset it. At that moment, Munju received a text message from an unknown number. It was an address with a code to open the door. There was also a picture of the necklace her husband had given her. That same night, Sanho drove Munju to that address. It seemed to be the home of a family with a small child. Munju was stunned when she saw the picture hanging on the wall. The family consisted of a couple and a son. The husband was Juni. At that moment, the son walked in. Then, shortly after, the boy's mother appeared. The woman introduced herself as Kang Hana. Hana said she had always wanted to meet Munju. Hana was also offended that Munju did not know her. Hana bragged that their son was 9 years old and looked like his father. Although Juni only sees his son once or twice a week, his son loves him very much. Tragically, he now has to undergo psychotherapy because he witnessed his father's murder. What's even more heartbreaking is that the incident happened at church while the boy was singing in the choir. Hana continues to criticize Munju's gentle handling of her grief. Munju is witnessed and comforted by the whole country. Meanwhile, Hana holds her chest and cries and runs around like a mad woman to protect her son. Hana sarcastically says that Munju is telling the world about her husband's tragic death and continuing her husband's work. Meanwhile, Hana is so heartbroken that she doesn't dare touch the coat Junik left behind. Only then does Hana get to the point. The DNA test results are back, and Hana will soon file a paternity suit. Hana wants her son to reclaim everything that was taken from him. What's even more unexpected is that Junik's grandmother also supports the two Hanas and suggests that they move in together. Munju blames Junik for not asking her for a divorce sooner. However, she suggests keeping it a secret. It would be better for Junik and the boy. Besides, Munju can give the boy more than what Junik left behind. But Hana insists that she did not do this for money, but because she loves Junik. Hana wants the world to know who Junik truly loves. Hana wants the world to know that she has a child with Junik. Munju's grief is just an act. In response to Hana's provocation, Munju declares that she usually does not fight the weak, but if it comes to that, she will not back down. Only then does Hana reveal that she was the one who designed the necklace that Junik gave to Munju. Hana prayed while making the necklace and promised she would do everything to see Munju cry. Munju left the house in pain. She threw the necklace away. She was unsteady on her feet, but still said she was fine. That same night, Munju rushed to meet Junik's mother, Okson. Munju asked Okson how long she had known about Hana. According to Okson, Hana had deliberately pursued and taken advantage of Junik. Okson had paid a large sum of money for Hana to agree to move abroad before the election. Munju was angry because she lost the chance to say goodbye to Junik because she was the one who wanted a divorce. Munju wondered why Okson told her to run for president. Was it to humiliate Munju in front of everyone? Son said it was an opportunity for Munju to escape from Junik's shadow and become herself. Munju thought Okson seemed to have lost her mind. Munju says she will cut all ties with Okson. Then Munju tears up their contract. Munju says she only wants to take one thing with her when she leaves. It is the jewelry box that Okson gave Munju. Okson then asks Munju to fill it with gifts from Junik. But jewelry never made Munju happy, so she started collecting Okson's secrets. Munju fills the jewelry box with USB sticks that are evidence of Okson's tax fraud and illegal activities. Munju claims that the collection can replace her to work with Okson. Munju asks Okson to make sure Hana will keep quiet. Just then, Junik's grandmother walks in and deliberately compliments Hana's son on how much he looks like Junik. She criticizes Munju as a bad wife for almost letting Junik leave without a child. Munju didn't say anything, but called her assistant Miji. Munju asked Miji to immediately carry out the donation list, all the inheritance. Junik's grandmother was immediately worried because she had promised Hana part of Junik's property. When Munju left, she sadly asked Sanho if she knew a place where she wouldn't have to see or hear anyone. He immediately took her to a deserted field far from the city center. Munju wanted to try shooting. It was her first time holding a gun. Sanho guided Munju and said the hardest part was handling the recoil. He gently placed his hand on her shoulder to keep her steady. After only a few shots, Munju hit the target. Sanho praised Munju for her talent. She was very good at shooting for the first time. When Munju returned to her room, she said that she finally understood the security service that Sanho provided, and thanks to him, she got through today. Sanho saw Munju squeezing her hand and immediately guessed that her hand was sore because shooting a gun often causes muscle tension. He gently massaged her hand. In today's lecture, Professor Im presented the extremely tense situation on the Korean peninsula. The United States was deploying all its forces to the peninsula, and war would break out within the next few days. He called on everyone to take to the streets to protest against the war so that the international community would know that they did not want war. While Miji was busy presenting the list of organizations receiving donations, Munju noticed the TV news announcing that President Che had returned from his visit to China and that the meeting with the Chinese president had been cancelled. That evening, on his way home, Professor Im was stopped by a group of young men who accused him of spreading rumors about war and encouraging people to riot. These two called him a spy and attacked him mercilessly. If he was so afraid of war, he should die now. When Munju visited the hospital, Professor Im said they were running out of time. The US had convinced President Chai that a preemptive strike was the only option. He listed 3 clear signs of war. These were the bombs that had been destroyed in Okinawa, the strategic nuclear submarine Michigan had just left Yokosuka port, and most obviously, the evacuation of American citizens. When the US military radio played Sinatra's Christmas song, it meant that within 12 hours, the air raids would begin. He said only Munju could stop this. He told her to go and tell everyone at all costs. At this time, the agents had come to arrest Professor Im. Munju wanted to take him to safety, but he said he was no longer strong enough. Sanho tried to stop the agents, but Professor Im stepped forward and let them take him away. Miji studied the text message history on Jun-ik's secret phone and deciphered what she thought was an error message from the network operator. It was the email password that Anderson had sent to Jun-ik. Anderson revealed to Jun-ik that a month ago, 3 sailors from a North Korean submarine had defected to the United States. They claimed that the submarine was a highly advanced 10-ton type, 140 meters long and 10 meters wide. It had room for 160 people and 16 2-meter diameter missile launchers. The agencies had studied satellite images and identified a shadow that matched the testimony of the 3. However, Anderson did not believe it. How could a submarine be built without any information leaking out? Jun-ik also suspected that the 3 defectors were lying. Anderson personally interrogated them, but one of them shot the other 2 and then committed suicide. The whole thing was buried. The US was still preparing to attack North Korea. With only the testimony of the 3 dead sailors as the only evidence, no one listened to Anderson's arguments. He decided to investigate himself and looked at all the documents of submarine parts transactions in the world. As expected, he found no evidence that North Korea was building a 10,000-ton nuclear submarine. However, he kept coming across the name Stella Jean, an American arms lobbyist. She bought special steel from Poland, sensors from Switzerland, and hired engineers from Sweden. It was rumored that 5 years ago, she went around spreading rumors that North Korea was capable of building a 10,000-ton submarine. Anderson and Jun-ik both suspected that Stella Jean was an American spy. Investigations showed that she went to South Korea 10 years ago and did not return. She might still be in Korea. Jun-ik believes he knows who Stella Jean is. Jun-ik promises to inform Anderson after everything is settled, but only 2 days later, he is murdered. At the same time, news of the USS Michigan submarine arriving at Busan port is announced. Everything is going exactly as Professor Im predicted. President Che goes to church to confess. Unexpectedly, the person sitting on the other side is not priest, but Munju. Munju asks President Che why he accepts war on the Korean peninsula. Until now, Munju always thought that President Che also wanted to prevent war like her, although the way of doing it was different. But in the end, what happened in Beijing made her change. President Chai says that Munju will never understand the pain of having to choose between the life and death of millions of people. However, Munju insisted that she would never choose war under any circumstances. Then, Munju went to the Chinese ambassador and asked him why China was ignoring the war in Korea. He said that there were things about times that no one could stop. It was foolish to think that humans could bend the will of heaven. She did not understand that because she had never seen great things. She could do nothing but pray for the war to end quickly, because otherwise it could escalate into World War III. Munju insisted that even though she was young and naive, she would do everything she could. He looked sorry for her. She was very beautiful, very smart, but she would die. Tonight, right before the fireworks festival in Busan, Munju gave a public talk. Munju bluntly warned that a war could break out for dawn tomorrow. The United States could launch an attack on North Korea within the next 24 hours. The Korean peninsula would be engulfed in flames. The news spread like wildfire. Munju accused the South Korean president of accepting the U.S. attack notification 2 days ago, and that she might be hiding in an underground bunker at a time when the people were at the brink of death. At this point, riot police rushed in. Munju tried to explain that the U.S. wanted to start a war because North Korea had built a nuclear submarine. Munju asked President Che what would happen if the U.S. attacked based on false intelligence. What if the submarine did not exist? Munju then made an online call with Anderson Miller, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State. Despite being surrounded by police, Munju still asked Anderson to tell the truth about the submarine. submarine. Anderson confirmed that the only evidence of the submarine's existence was the unverified testimony of 3 fugitives. A video from the investigator showed that one of them had confessed that he had only heard rumors about the submarine but had never seen it with his own eyes. He lied because he was ordered by his superiors. Perhaps his superiors wanted war to break out. At this point, the police declared the gathering illegal and ordered it to disperse immediately. Up above, the sniper was ordered to shoot Munju as soon as he heard the first fireworks. Police cars rushed in to press the crowd, rushing to arrest Munju. Danger was imminent. Munju still tried to say that she hoped her judgment was wrong, but she would rather be a rumor monger than sit still. She asked to spread the news. Please help her stop the war. At this moment, Sanho drove her car toward the police's path and dragged Munju away, but the foreign sniper still saw them and opened fire. Luckily, Sanho managed to pull Munju down. The 2 of them merged into the chaotic crowd and ran to the pier. When the agents chased after them, Sanho had already carried Munju onto the canoe and sped away. Unexpectedly, the sniper was still following and fired straight at the canoe. This time, Munju was hit. Luckily, the bullet only grazed her hand. When they found a safe hiding place, Sanho immediately began first aid on Munju. Luckily, she was not seriously injured, but the wound needed to be stitched. He gave her a bundle of gauze for her to bite down on. Then he started stitching the wound like a real doctor. For a mercenary like Sanho, such an injury was very common. In combat, there was only 1 minute to give first aid, and then he had to pick up his gun immediately. Only then did Sanho stop the bleeding from his stomach wound. At this time, President Chai made an official speech on the security of the Korean peninsula. She admitted that the U.S. had doubts about North Korea's nuclear submarine, but she firmly believed that the U.S. would not make any decisions until they verified the existence of the weapon. Back at the church, Munju believed that President Che would choose the path of preventing war if possible, so Munju presented her plan. Munju could prove that the submarine did not exist and would take President Che out of the shadow of his hidden uncle. President Che agreed, but she could not guarantee Munju's safety. She warned that the Americans would hate Munju for doing so. In front of the media, President Chai affirmed that no matter what happened, she would stay by her people's side and do her best for peace. Immediately after, Anderson had an interview with the American media. He explains that the reason he did all this was because the U.S. attack on North Korea was based on false information, and what if it led to a war and cost tens of thousands of lives? And in the end, no submarine was found, but the U.S. side still insisted on eliminating the threat from North Korea. Meanwhile, Munju realized that she was not prepared for the next step. She thought it was over. Sanho then took Munju to a cabin hidden deep in the forest. While Sanho was busy preparing food, he suddenly heard Munju scream. It turned out that she could not manage in the bathroom with one hand. Sanho had to help Munju wash her hair because the wound on her hand would take at least 3 to 4 weeks to heal. Sanho said that even if he only had one arm and one leg, he could still shoot. Even if he was shot in the heart, he still had a few seconds before he died. Munju told herself that she would use those few seconds to shoot the person who shot her. Seeing that Munju was not holding the gun properly, Sanho adjusted her posture, and sure enough, she hit the target. That night, they both enjoyed the food Sanho cooked for dinner. He said that in his hometown, people often put ferns in chicken soup, but Munju ate deliciously, and she admitted that it had been a long time since she was pregnant. She once had a son named Peach. Because of morning sickness, she only craved peaches. In Hana's warm house, Munju felt relieved when she learned that Juniak also had a son who loved soccer. Hana once wanted to take everything away from Munju, but she only wanted to trade everything to live in that peaceful house. Then the radio played Sinatra's "Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." It was a pre-war signal. Sanho said that we Koreans believe that war can break out at any moment, so there's nothing to be shocked about. Munju asked what Sanho would do if war really broke out. Sanho said he just wanted to be with the person he loved. Munju asked Sanho if he still had family in the north. Munju said that because of her, Sanho couldn't go back to them. But Sanho said that he just wanted to stay here. Sanho said that he should have taken that bullet instead of Munju. At that moment, Munju's frozen heart melted. The 2 of them shared a sweet kiss as if enjoying their last happiness before the storm hit. But right at that moment, sirens blared loudly throughout the city. An urgent announcement was made from the Civil Air Defense Alarm Control Center, ordering a nationwide alert. All citizens were asked to evacuate and move to the nearest shelter. The episode ended in the suffocating atmosphere of an impending war. Was that nuclear submarine real? The next episodes promise to be even more explosive. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you find it interesting, please give us a like, share, or comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell to receive notifications when the next clip is available. See you all in the next videos.